if you have issues with your spine, whether that is your neck, your mid-back, which is rare, or your lower back, then after a couple of years, this issue that is undealt with, that hasn't been addressed, starts to integrate itself into your identity. And so many blokes with back issues will accept it as being normal, right? And I can understand exactly why this happens, and I'm going to talk about why this happens in this video to hopefully capture you long before you've given up hope, right? Why you should listen to me. My name's Paul Green. I've trained thousands of elite soldiers when I was in the parachute regiment as a physical training instructor, with a primary job role of building the soldiers to have elite levels of strength and resilience in their joints so that it can deploy anywhere in the world at a moment's notice and potentially do some crazy shit, as you can probably imagine. Now, 2 years ago, I left the army, and now I help mainly jiu-jitsu grapplers delete their injuries and build physical resilience, physical body armor. So I've got a lot of experience with these types of people, right? So please do pay attention, and hopefully you can leave this video with some motivation and some confidence in being able to train out of these issues. So what I'm going to talk about is why this becomes part of who you are, right? Because if you can start understanding how your thinking changes at the earliest possible point, you will never let this happen. And why this thinking and why the thought process and why the beliefs are so important is because these guide your decisions, right? You're not going to train and you're not going to deadlift. You're not going to do a flexed spine deadlift if you haven't believed that you can do a flexed spine deadlift for 5 years. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going right back to the point in which an injury, your back injury, has occurred, right? And I'm going to talk about that moment, and not necessarily that moment from a physical standpoint. I'm going to talk about thought processes after it happens, right? So, back issue happens. Straight away, there's obviously the physical limitation, there's the pain, right? And what is the pain? Because you've got to be able to understand that the pain actually isn't a problem. It's just your body's response to an underlying problem, right? But the first thing you'll have done is potentially subconsciously reach for painkillers, reach for anti-inflammatories just to get you to a certain baseline for a few hours. And then you're going to start researching the lower back. Straight on Google, you look at the spine and you look at how mental the spine actually looks. And you're just going to be like, fuck, right? And you're going to see all the nerves and you're going to see the discs and you're just going to be like looking at it and being like, wow, this is complicated shit, right? And it's so easy to be overwhelmed with fear of training the spine. You've got every expert that tells you that you have to lift a certain way and you can't do this. You have to lift at work a certain way. We've even got manual method of handling courses to guide our lifting of boxes at work. Oh, you can't lift like this. You have to lift. Like, there is so much information out there keeping people scared of training their back, right? So again, going back to the thoughts and beliefs that have got you into this position where you fully accept that your life is like this, right? And the reason I'm talking about the back specifically, right, is because this is very common with back issues. It's not as common with a shoulder issue. People be like, yeah, well, there is a solution out there. I'm just probably a bit lazy. People think the same as the knee. It's like, oh yeah, you know, my knees are fucked, right? But yeah, I'm probably a little bit lazy. But there's just something about the spine that maybe, I don't know, there's just something about the spine where people are very easy to accept that this is going to exist and be present in their life for the remainder of their life, right? And I'm here to give, like, as I say, I'm here to give you, I'm here to show you the alternative, right? So, fear, an avoidance of aggravating the issue, right? And what else? It's there's an overwhelming fear of like disc protrusions, slipping the disc, having nerve symptoms, all serious, very serious things, right? And you've got the visual of the spine, and you've got the visual of all of these nerves. Like, of course, you are going to be like extremely cautious, extremely guided by rest and potentially massages and chiropractors. And it's like, you literally will not believe that you can sort this out yourself. You can literally sort this out yourself. I can guarantee this, right? But because of that influx of information and all of these crazy words and crazy nerves and all of the like negative things that can come from this, you literally go, I can't do it, right? And when you think I can't do it for 20 years, that is just part of who you are with regards to this issue. So you'll end up cycling through acupuncture, masseuse, sports masseuse, chiropractor, a random injection, and you'll just keep doing these random things because you just genuinely don't believe that you're capable of getting yourself out of the situation, and you absolutely are, right? And this is where I'm going to transition into the optimistic, the confident, and the motivation and the inspiring. Because if I can inspire you, if I can get you excited about doing things that you haven't previously done before to get yourself stronger, then I've done my job. It's literally every video on my channel has that goal. I want to make you excited about things that you haven't done before. So then you have confidence going out there doing bits that is going to make a hell of a difference, because it's the avoidance of the solutions that creates the problem. And it's the regular avoidance of the solutions that starts to be part of your identity. It doesn't have to be part of your identity. And what I mean by identity, it's literally how you think. You genuinely believe that there's no solution out there. You genuinely believe, as I say, you are destined to be in pain, to have reduced function, to have reduced movement the next morning, stiff, crawling out of bed. And it's just simply not true, right? So the spine does look crazy, and it does look scary, and there's nerves everywhere, right? Understandable that, someone would look at that and go, fuck, and just expect the worst. What you need to understand is the spine is unbelievably effective at absorbing load, right? And what I mean by load, walking down the street is your spine just kind of doing this on a microscopic level and just absorbing. When you're running, it's doing this. And you'll probably notice if you've got back issues, you might struggle running, you might struggle jumping. And this is why I like to program them movements as part of a back rehab training program. But understand the way the spine is basically maximizes the body's effective ability to load the spine, also twist, bend forward, bend backwards, twist the other way, all under load. That's the reason the spine looks so crazy. It's because it's unbelievable at doing all of these different functions. But the problem started when you started believing that the spine doesn't like load, and it doesn't like to be flexed, and it doesn't like to be extended because it hurts. So what do you do in this situation, right? Basically, what you need to do is take your spine, assess the current ability level of your spine, right? Most people tell you that you need to do neutral spine everything because neutral spine is the safest. The safest thing is the lowest risk, but it provides the least benefit. Anything in this world that is beneficial to your physical development has risk. The best possible exercises have the highest risk, right? And the only way that you can navigate making that as little risk as possible is just less dose of these exercises. So it doesn't mean it means that you don't deadlift ever. You don't not deadlift, but you maybe just deadlift once every 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So it's about minimum effective recoverable dose rather than avoiding it altogether. Because if you avoid it altogether, you've heard the saying, if you don't use it, you will lose it. And then it's just that slippery slope of painkillers, more slippery slope of more tissue damage, degeneration, stronger painkillers. More slippery slope, stronger painkillers. Then the painkillers become part of your identity. This is brutal stuff, lads. It fucking is brutal stuff. It's dark as fuck, right? And it's all about you snapping out of that belief system at its core. So you need to take your spine through all of the functions that it does. You need to move your spine. You need to see how your spine absorbs load. And all I'd recommend you doing for that is just literally jumping up and down, like you're skipping without a skipping rope. Does that work? Does that feel all right? Cool. That's a huge tick. That means your S1 and L4 tolerate load pretty well, because body weight moving up and down is actually a decent amount of load, right? People that have certain lower back issues can't do that without pain, and they have to be then built up to absorb an impact in the gym, and then we incrementally add in impact to help them be able to do that movement. So if that brings on pain, then cool, you understand that, all right, then I might want to take my foot off the gas regarding that and maybe make that a little bit easier. And the way you'd make that easier is just doing a different version of the exercise that's a little bit easier. The next thing you need to do is move your spine neutrally in a bunch of different movements, right? So whether that's a deadlift, like half body weight, just to see how well your spine is able, because neutral spine is anti-flexion, because it's all about stopping this happening. So you're using all these stabilizer muscles that stabilize, that oppose flexion. It's also anti-extension, which is core muscles. So fighting to keep neutral spine is actually pretty important, right? Because for the most part, neutral spine genuinely doesn't cause any issues. Like mostly neutral, but also you get the loading as well. You get that shock absorption benefit as well. So you're building the strength of the bones of the spine and everything else. So you try neutral spine, but you need to understand, because a lot of you might deadlift, right? You need to understand that the safer exercise doesn't provide much value. So deadlifts are great. Most people avoid them because they're perceived as being the highest risk. They're not even close to the highest risk, trust me, right? But what they're not is the highest benefit. They need to be part of your program, absolutely, but we need to see where you are as an individual. And like I say, I'm explaining through what I send my guys with the low back issues. I send them a spine functions test, and I build out their whole rehab program and their training program, because they get 2 programs when they work with me on a one-to-one basis. And we basically work through each of them. And then eventually the rehab program gets removed because we don't need it anymore. And then the full time on the normal training program, developing their resilience of their joints, developing their athleticism. So we've done neutral spine. We've ticked that off. That's a confidence piece. Most people can move neutral spine. The problem is you've stopped believing that you can move neutral spine. You've stopped believing that deadlifts are useful. They are useful, right? However, it doesn't stop there, because most people get back pain in the flexed position. Unless you've got disc bulges, lateral posterior disc bulges, then you're going to get really bad symptoms when you extend the spine backwards, when the disc crunches in on itself. That is when you're going to get a buildup of pressure, and it's going to feel like your spine is going to snap. For you people, you need to avoid extension for a period of time temporarily. And this is so important that you understand. I just can't, this is the belief system that you need to snap out of. I need to stop doing this for the rest of my life. This is just the way it is. I'm just getting old. It's my genetics. It's the sport. No. That is information. We just need to avoid extension. I say this with confidence because I've took hundreds of clients through this process. And the biggest battle is getting them to overcome these mental barriers, right? So if you get symptoms through extension, we need to avoid extension, not for the rest of your life, just temporarily, right? And you need to prioritize the other function, which is the flexion. Most people have an insane amount of fear with spine flexion, right? Spine, like, people think that when you flex the spine, let's say there's an imaginary disc in between the spine, they think if you flex the spine, you're just going to push the disc out and it's just going to go boop. It's just not how it works. Like, the amount of force that you would need to literally push these discs out of these vertebrae into a nerve is, honestly, it's just ridiculous. It's an insane amount, and there's no way that you can do that, right? So it's fear. The fear is stopping you from doing these movements. And right, this is my video to give you confidence and a decent entry point to building your strength in these different functions. We've talked about neutral. We've talked about avoiding extension if you've got a disc bulge. However, we'll talk about flexion. Flexion of the spine, we do loads every day. We do it shitloads. We're sat there, we get up, we don't really think about how we lift things off the floor. We flex the spine a lot. So give yourself credit, you can do it, right? However, if you actually do this in the gym setting and load it properly, then you just do dumbbells and you just do seated spinal flexion. So you know that cat-cow position where you have your back like this, the yoga one, where you're in that downward dog or facing the floor basically. You do this same kind of spinal flexion, but you do it seated, exactly as I am in the chair now, and you just literally chin on chest, which is cervical spine flexion, T-spine flexion. You just go down like that with dumbbells, all the way down so your chest is touching your quads, and then you'd reverse the movement. So now you're training yourself in spinal flexion. You do that for a few weeks, and then you start building up to standing up with it. And this is now you building confidence through a movement, getting results. But more importantly, you're breaking down a belief system that said for 10 years, you couldn't flex your spine. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can flex your spine, which leaves us to the last couple, which is rotation. Can you rotate your spine without pain? Cool. Can you rotate your spine with load without pain? Cool. And then it goes into extension, which is spine extension, which is like end range stuff. End range of the abs, where your abs are fully lengthened. Hopefully, I've given you some entry points, right? Because at the end of the day, you can throw your toys out the pram and you can go, I just can't do this for the rest of my life. You know, this is just the way it is. And you've got to be honest with yourself. How productive is that realistically? It's like literally teenager level, habits. It starts with the belief, and it starts with the belief of I'm going to find a fucking start point for myself across all of them functions. I'm going to temporarily avoid the ones that bring on the most symptoms, but, and this is what I do with my one-to-one guys, we revisit that movement. I just had a client there who his spine felt terrible and he used to get nerve symptoms when he done his C-spine through extension. So we worked flexion, loads of flexion of his C-spine, right? Lo and behold, 6 or 7 weeks later, he can now do extension without symptoms. If you look at his MRI scan, you see disc bulges everywhere. We've managed to build the strength and actually get the disc to just creep back in a little bit to stop giving him these nerve symptoms. This is how the body gets stronger, right? It's about precise strength development. However, you potentially might not believe that these productive habits will work for you. And that's because you've accepted a certain belief system that simply isn't true. And that's a shame, right? However, I'm hoping that if you watch this video, you're actually open to addressing these issues, because what I'm a massive advocate of is software first, hardware second, right? And that's why when I'm working with blokes with injuries, with chronic injuries on my program, we're massive on mindset, because it's the main reason, you getting in your own way is the main reason that you've stayed stuck with these issues for ages. And once we just readjust the mindset, and you've got the training and a massive support system behind you who's working with you every day, looking at your form of your workouts, looking at how you're eating, looking at your absolutely everything, all your recovery, building out everything for you and supporting you every step of the way, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to not be scared when you've got literally me saying, stop being a pussy. And you're like, when you've got somebody who's saying, stop being a pussy and doing an exercise, which is just an exercise, that will develop your strength of your most problematic areas. It's actually pretty funny. Because it's funny that I know that you've not done it for 10 years and I'm telling you to do it and you've got so many layers of fear. And when you do it, you're like, why was I scared for 10 years of doing this exercise? I haven't done this exercise for 10 years. It's mad, but in a nutshell, you're getting in your own way. I hope me explaining the layers of the psychology is give you some motivation, right? Just to wrap it up and summarise. Your spine fucking loves load. It can absorb so much force, it can twist, it can bend forward, and it can extend forward. Whichever of those functions causes symptoms now, temporarily avoid it, but train the other ones. When you train the other ones well, with great level of precision, like I do on my program with my guys, we can revisit that one that was causing the symptoms, and then the symptoms reduce. And then we train the rest of them, and we might introduce a little bit of that. Eventually the symptoms go away. And it's a great thing to take people through, right? If you are interested in me taking you through these issues, getting these results, then the link in the description is to book onto a call with me and discuss one-on-one coaching.